There are places you used to take your dog that you just don't go anymore.
Welcome to The Dog Who Asked for More, the podcast for dog parents navigating the messy, complicated parts of life with a dog who needs more, so you can feel less alone in the hard parts, more confident in your decisions, and more connected to the dog who asked you to show up differently.
I'm Em, a dog mom and dog trainer who has been exactly where you are and who works with dog parents trying to figure out what their dog actually needs. There's something that happens so gradually with a reactive dog that you almost don't notice it until you're on the other side of it. You stop going places, not all at once, not with a decision you can point to. One day, the dog park feels like too much, so you skip it. Then the busy parking lot. Then the pet store. Easier to leave them at home than to spend the whole trip watching every corner, every cart, or every dog across the aisle. And then it's not just the hard places. It's the places that used to be easy. And somewhere in there, it stops being a choice you're making and starts being just the way things are. The places started dropping off one by one. The dog park first. That one made sense. It was never the right environment for him anyway. Then the pet store. Then the places that used to feel casual. And the thing is, I didn't feel bad about most of it because Fitz wasn't stressed. He was better without those places. So it felt like the right call every time. And it was the right call. That's what makes this complicated. I wasn't avoiding for the wrong reasons. I was protecting his nervous system and it was working. But what I didn't notice until later was that the world had gotten very small. Not because I was failing him, because I was doing exactly what he needed. And somewhere in that, a lot of things just quietly stopped being part of our life. This is one of the things about having a reactive dog that doesn't get talked about honestly. That life quietly gets smaller. Not because you wanted it to, not because you stopped caring, but because every outing became a calculation and the calculation kept coming out the same way. And eventually you decided to stop doing the math. The social life narrows. The errands narrow. The places you feel free to just go without planning, without preparing, without running every scenario, those start to feel like they belong to a very different version of your life. And you don't grieve it loudly because it happened so slowly, you almost didn't notice. And because you're saying it out loud, it sounds like you're blaming your dog. And you're not. But it's still a loss. I moved into a house with a yard specifically so that we could stop taking walks. At the time, that felt like a solution. Looking back, it wasn't entirely about Fitz. There was a situation at home that made going outside feel complicated in a different way. And the yard felt like freedom when it was actually a much smaller world. That's the thing about avoidance. It solves the immediate problem, and it quietly shrinks everything else. And here's the really confusing part, because some of the avoiding is actually the right call. Some environments are genuinely too much for your dog right now or maybe ever. Some outings are doing more harm than good. Is this protecting my dog's nervous system? Or is this shrinking my life in a way that isn't sustainable? Both can be true at the same time. And the difference matters because you can spend years doing the right thing for your dog and slowly disappearing in the process and not notice until something reminds you of the version of your life that you used to have. And even when you do notice, even when you can name it, the avoidance doesn't just stop because the anxiety that created it is still there. You know the dog park made things work, and knowing doesn't make the next decision easier. It just makes you more aware of what you're choosing. What I started to notice was that some of the avoiding was about Fitz, and some of it was about me, my own nervous system, the anticipatory anxiety of what might happen. And those needed different solutions. For him, sometimes fewer exposures really was the right call. For me, I needed to figure out which things I was avoiding because they weren't right for us yet, and which things I was avoiding because I'd gotten scared. Some of the life that got smaller can come back. Not all at once, but the first step is noticing which parts you actually miss. Because here's what happens when you've been avoiding for a long time. The avoidance starts to feel like just the way things are. You forget what it felt like to just go somewhere. You stop noticing the loss because the absence has been normal long enough. And then something reminds you, a photo, a conversation, a moment. and you feel it. The thing you gave up, the version of your life with your dog that you thought you were going to have. That feeling is worth paying attention to. Not to spiral, just to notice that something got lost and to ask, is any of it something I want to try to get back? And it can get complicated because wanting it back and knowing how to get there are two different things. You can miss the dog park and still know that it's not the right decision. You can want to try something new and still feel the cost of it before you leave the driveway. The missing doesn't come with a roadmap. It just tells you the direction. You don't have to go everywhere. You don't have to push your dog into every situation. Some things really aren't worth that cost right now. But knowing the difference between protecting your dog and making your world smaller out of fear, that is worth looking at, honestly. What's the one place you stopped going that you actually missed? The life that got smaller isn't a character flaw. It's what happens when you love something complicated and you're doing your best with what you have. You didn't fail. You adapted. And some of what you adapted away from, you might be able to find your way back to when the time is right, on your terms. And if you're sitting there thinking, I don't even know what my dog can actually handle right now, the Dog Body Language Secrets Quiz is where I'd start. When you can read the early signals, it gets a lot easier to know what's worth trying and what to hold off on. The link is in the episode description. So be kind, spread joy, and remember, a smaller life right now doesn't mean a smaller life forever.